The World Bank estimates that 47% of the workforce are freelancers, and I believe that the future of work is freelancing. So if you're a 9 to 5er and you want to explore the freedom that freelancing can give you, then let's talk about how you can build your personal brand to do that. Grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. The events of the last few years really increased our appetite for wanting flexibility when it comes to our work. We became accustomed to working from home, to trying new things, to exploring more of our passion. The research also aligns with this increasing desire to be working remotely or to work from home. For example, in the US, the research has shown that 35% of people who have remote work as an option in their jobs opt to do so. Gen Zers are also holding second jobs, and a lot of the time they do this really happily as well. They have side businesses, they have other career pursuits that they want to explore, they have side gigs, and they are building essentially what is known as a portfolio career. They're exploring multiple skills and interests instead of just being stuck on this particular path. Now let's think about this. This is a generation of people that grew up on YouTube and TikTok and understanding and observing all of the opportunities that were available to them in a way that generations that have gone before them probably didn't have the same access to. They can now teach themselves new skills. They can explore all of the different things that they are interested in and find more career opportunities than ever before. And so they want that flexibility. They want that ability to be able to do different things in their career. They are craving to work from home when they want to. And now with more of the workforce returning to a more traditional 9 to 5 framework where people are being encouraged in many cases back to the office or directed back into the office, there is a little bit of what I see as a bit of a potential impasse that is happening between organizations and employees, because for the people that value working from home, for example, it's going to be difficult to transition back into working in the office full time. And employers are within their rights to demand certain things from their employees, but there is a element that also needs to take into consideration the culture and the satisfaction that people have in that working environment and how people generally work best, because not everyone works best in an office setting. Some people work best on their own. But I also think there might come a time when the hybrid work model, which I do think is a really nice in between, might not actually work for employers anymore. And even for the employee side, maybe it will come to a point where you crave more and more of that chance to work from home, and you also start to feel a level of dissatisfaction, which is where freelancing can be a really nice opportunity to have that flexibility to do your job in the times that suit you, in the location that suits you, and to allow yourself to explore the other opportunities that are available to you in your career as well. So let's talk about how you can build your personal brand to be able to do that. And I'm going to share my top 3 tips to do that with you today. So let's dive into tip number 1. Tip number 1 is to master marketable skills for your personal brand that relate to freelancing. So do some research into what skills may be in demand in the freelancing space. For example, these might be things related to a creative skill like graphic design, photography, videography, web development, or maybe it's something that is more focused in the admin space like being an assistant or a bookkeeper, for example, or maybe it's accounting or other services that you could offer in that space. But do the research as to what is in demand in the marketplace and align that to your existing skill set. What do you already have an aptitude in, and what could you develop further. When you think about your upskill plan, consider the technology that is also impacting that particular area or any other trends that are going to have a significant impact on that space. Because you really want to make sure that if you are investing the time to build that skill, which will most likely take you time to develop, that you want to be thinking years ahead as to where that space is going in the future. You might find that it may potentially be exploding in the future and you see so much opportunity there. You might find that maybe it is an area that is more and more going to become redundant in that particular industry. So really just try and think future focused when it comes to what your freelancing goals might be. So this is about balancing, finding something that you love with something that the marketplace also actually needs and is demanding. And this leads me to a great concept in Japanese culture called ikigai. And in the book Ikigai, it explains that ikigai is this concept embedded in Japanese culture that is about finding the thing that makes you want to jump out of bed in the morning. It's that thing that you love doing. But importantly, it balances that passion with a more practical mindset too. So finding your ikigai is about 4 key elements. It's about finding something that you love, finding something the world needs, finding something that the world will pay for, and finding something that you're good at. So the intersection of those things becomes your ikigai. When you are thinking about your upskill plan, remind yourself that even a small amount of time that you can dedicate to developing new skills can have an impact. There was some simple math in Stephen Pressfield's book, Put Your Ass Where Your Heart Is, that I never could forget. He highlighted that if you were to dedicate 1 hour a day to a particular thing that you want to be able to pursue, that you are passionate about, then in the course of 365 days, in the course of a year, that would equate to the equivalent of 9 40-hour work weeks. So imagine the skills that you could develop with just an hour a day. It's the equivalent of 9 40-hour work weeks. Now just think about that in the context of your work and how long 9 weeks can actually feel, and imagine just what you could do for your career if you actually spent the time developing a skill just with 1 hour a day for a year. Tip number 2 is to build your personal brand portfolio of proof. What I love about freelancers in particular is that they are much more concerned with sharing their work online, on LinkedIn for example, as opposed to, say, their office team lunch. And what they are doing is they are building the proof of their personal brand. They are showing their value. And they are doing this understanding that you may not need their services at this particular point in time, but they are starting to occupy a piece of real estate in your mind for that particular skill set or service that they have to offer. So that when the time arises where you may actually need that thing, where you have a problem that you need someone to solve for you, they become aligned to that thing. They become the solution provider that comes to mind for that person. And they are essentially creating leverage, which is something that Naval Ravikant highlights. And I've shared this quote on this channel a few times before, and I will continue to, because I know that it is something that most traditional 9-to-5ers are perhaps not actually understanding the full potential that is being highlighted here and what they can actually do for their personal brand to not only future-proof their career, but continue to add value to the marketplace and continue to build their reputation in a marketplace outside of just their current employer. So what he says is, you are waiting for a moment when something emerges in the world. They need a skill set and you're uniquely qualified. You build your brand in the meantime on Twitter, on YouTube, and by giving away free work. You make a name for yourself and you take some risks in the process. When it is time to move on the opportunity, you can do so with leverage, the maximum leverage possible. So I know that when it comes to traditional personal branding or career advice, the emphasis is usually placed on face-to-face networking as being something that you really need to pursue to be able to elevate your career opportunities. Believe me, I absolutely understand this argument. I was president of my MBA alumni network, so I understand the value of gathering face-to-face. But I also think that not enough people emphasize the value of building relationships online too. And this is something that I also think opens up your opportunities further beyond just your local area. For example, you might be able to physically attend events in your local area and build relationships in that space. But when you are thinking about freelancing, you have that opportunity a lot of the time to work remotely, if not maybe the majority of the time to work remotely, which means that you can expand your borders as to who your customers, your clients may be. And keep in mind that on the other side of that relationship, the world is changing. Because of the events in recent years, we have now become accustomed to working with people online. I, for example, have clients across all of Australia. It is now normal to jump on a Zoom call or a Teams call and connect with someone that you have never actually met face to face and be able to deliver services for them, to be able to work with them in a really efficient way. And this was something that not that long ago wasn't normal for most people, but now it is the norm, and more we have technologies that are supporting us in that space. So just remind yourself to just expand some of that thinking beyond your local area, because you'll increase your opportunities as well. And while you are considering technology, the obvious one for anyone that is thinking about freelancing is building your personal brand on social media. And think about where your audience is most likely to show up. Is it YouTube? Is it podcasts? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Instagram? Is it TikTok? Can you manage potentially multiple platforms as well if they are engaged in multiple platforms? And what is also sustainable for you in those spaces? And if you really want to elevate your personal brand as well, consider establishing a personal brand website, which you can do on platforms like Squarespace, for example. And they make this really easy, and you can make websites look beautiful and professional even if you have never created a website before. And what a personal brand website will do is that it will give you a home for your personal brand. So if you have portfolios of your work on, say, LinkedIn, maybe you share videos or articles or photos onto LinkedIn, then you have a portfolio that exists on there. And you might have a portfolio on Instagram, for example, and you might have it on other platforms too. But when you have a personal brand website, it gives you somewhere where your potential customers or clients can go, where they can then discover all of the expertise that you have in one space and realize that maybe there was more to your expertise that they weren't actually aware of previously, and get a complete picture of your personal brand and everything that it has to offer the marketplace and that relationship. My tip number 3 is to find your people. Once you have started to build up your portfolio of proof for your personal brand, then share it with some people. Find organizations or individuals that are aligned with the services that you can potentially offer, and reach out to them on, say, a LinkedIn platform, or maybe you know their email directly and you can contact them and put together a pitch that will send them your portfolio of work so they can see what you are capable of and what you might be able to do for their business or for them as an individual. And while they may not actually need that service at the time, it can then plant the seed for if there ever is that opportunity to work together in the future. And keep in mind that when you are cold contacting people, even when it is someone that you might know that not everyone is going to get back to you. You'll most likely be ignored by the majority of people. But all it takes for every attempt that you make to establish a relationship is for one person to connect with you. And even if they don't need that particular service, as I said, just at that time, they could need it in the future, or someone that they know could need it in the future. And you're just trying to establish more direct relationships with people, as opposed to everything just being you putting your work out there into the universe on social media and hoping that you attract those people, which, believe me, from my experience, actually does work as well. But I also think you can take a little bit more action in having those direct relationships with people. Also, keep in mind that when it comes to freelancing, you want to try and do some research as to how people are actually engaging freelancing work. So they might even be advertising on traditional job platforms. Maybe they are using a platform like Seek, which is what we have here in Australia. Maybe they're using LinkedIn and advertising jobs there. And while they're not actually advertising for employees, they're using those platforms to find freelancers. So just keep in mind that there may be opportunities hidden in that space as well. And try and be creative with what you are searching for as well. Don't just search one thing, try a few different things in those platforms just to make sure that you aren't missing any opportunities in that space. Again, this isn't going to be something that is necessarily just restricted to your local area. So you may be trying to tap into people that are advertising nationwide, for example. And remind yourself, if you are using a traditional job platform to be able to secure work for your freelancing, then there will be the expectation of some of the more traditional means of pursuing those opportunities. So, for example, having a resume and a cover letter ready to go as well. And when you do that, just remember to link your portfolio or share your portfolio as a part of that application as well. So if your future is freelancing and you want to learn more about how you can build your online personal brand, then check out my previous episode on this topic. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.